country's real estate market proved remarkably resilient in 2020, despite all of the challenges to the broader economy and to the labor market. Yet money was cheap, home sales soared, and prices hit records in some places like Toronto. That's 2020, and it's almost over. What will 2021 bring? Let's bring in John Pasalis, president of Realosophy. And John, you follow the market very closely. The largest market in the country, Toronto, hit new all-time highs this year. Sales were soaring. Can we keep it up into the new year?
It's looking like we probably will. I mean, there's no slowing down in the low-rise market. December was an unbelievably busy month for sales, and I think when we see the stats come out next week, we're probably going to see record volumes, and we're seeing a big turnaround in the downtown condo market, which was a sluggish segment. So I suspect we're going to be heading into a pretty busy 2021.
Now, that's a very intriguing one, and I have to say, over the holidays, I planned not to be on Twitter at all. I checked in a little bit, and I was watching your feed, and when I started to see you talking about the fact that we're seeing that, strength return to the downtown condo, this seems to be an investor's play, or is this just regular people saying, I think it's time to buy a 400 square foot condo?
Yeah, I mean, we're finding that the biggest factor driving the turnaround in the condo market is definitely demand from investors. So this is just, investors wanting to buy the dip. Quite honestly, I think they jumped in a little bit sooner than I thought investors would. I always expected investors to jump in faster than end users, but we're finding that a lot of people are just wanting to kind of buy an investment condo. They see the prices down. And they're optimistic that the market's going to turn around sooner rather than later.
Now, what you and I have talked about over the years, and it wasn't so much about the condos during the other times when we were worried about a bubble in real estate, would be about investors buying homes, negative carry month to month, and they say, I'm not worried because prices go up forever. As we take a look at the conditions right now, we know that rents are down, 12, 13, 15% in downtown Toronto. I don't think I've seen any headlines so far about the rent situation turning around.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the rental market's probably going to be far slower to recover. Again, partly because people aren't going to be going into offices anytime soon. But again, I think like a lot of people are buying condos right now are certainly negative carry. I mean, if you're spending $600,000 for a condo and making $1,800 a month in rent, that's not a great return. But again, I think a lot of these investors are expecting rents to recover, and many of them are just buying with the expectation that condo prices will surge. I mean, they see what's going on in the low-rise market and are just expecting that to kind of spill over into the condominium market as well.
Now, we know that the condo story in Toronto has been different as to whether you're downtown or whether you're out in what we call the 905 or the suburbs. And obviously, the single-family home activity has been hot in those surrounding regions as well. Does that hold up through 2021? I mean, everyone told me this year, it's people who wanted to get, more space and get a little further out of the city. As life hopefully starts to change back to the way it was, or at least something like the way it was and before all this, can we still expect that kind of strength in the outer areas?
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to still continue to see that. I mean, even in the fourth quarter of this year, the suburbs were definitely far more competitive than downtown Toronto. And similarly with the condominiums in the suburbs, I mean, 905 condominiums were not as impacted as condos in the downtown core. It's really the downtown core condos that saw both a big decline in rents and in prices. And again, I think this is partly driven by the fact that, the disproportionate number of people buying 905 condominiums are probably end users. Whereas in the downtown core, we have a lot of investors and a lot of renters, and that segment got hit a lot. If you think about sort of a lot of the jobs in the downtown core, disappeared. So it made kind of renting a little bit less desirable in the downtown core.
Now, in the past, when we've seen real estate run up like this, and there was a concern among policymakers that the fundamentals, our fundamentals used to be strength of the labor market, strength of the economy. They both take a major hit this year. They would get concerned. They'd step in with regulation. I'm not getting that tone from policymakers at all this time around that they want to mess with one of the few things that's actually working in this economy.
Yeah, I mean, and to be frank with you, I mean, that's probably the most troubling thing, at least from my perspective. I mean, we definitely have like bubble-like symptoms and conditions in the housing market. I mean, we forget that we had a rapidly accelerating housing market in the first quarter of this year before COVID hit, where prices were surging, demand was surging, and we're kind of getting back to that market right now. And I do think policymakers should be more concerned about the direction of house prices, because it's not healthy if we start seeing prices increasing. I mean, in some areas in the suburbs, prices are up over 20% year over year. And of course, that's not a really healthy trend to see in the housing market.
I mean, that used to be the answer, right? If you couldn't afford to live in the city proper, then you moved out to the suburbs, and that was your affordability. That's no longer the answer. I actually saw a piece over the holidays that there's expectations that London, Ontario, for people who are not from around here, London's a great city. I like it. It's got a lot of charm. It's got some character in its downtown. It's also more than 2-hour drive away from Toronto, but they're expecting a lot of heat out there. I mean, people are really pushing it out there.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, it's really these really far, I don't even call them suburbs. I mean, they're quite far from Toronto. And I think a lot of the demand has been people wanting a little bit more space, people expecting either to work from home permanently or at least 3 days a week, you know, which certainly, I mean, a 2-hour commute to Toronto is quite long. But, you know, if you're only doing it 2 days a week, for some people that might be worth you know, getting a bit more square footage, lowering your mortgage payments. And I think it's driving the market in these really outer areas of the greater Toronto area.
So clearly some risks there. John, before I let you go, I want to ask you, bottom line, as long as the central banks keep money cheap and the bond markets play along, what would be the catalyst to end all this? Yeah,
I mean, I think just I guess anxiety from and a fear that prices are going too high. Again, with rates this cheap, I mean, it's really driving investor demand. And again, we know like that's really what drives housing bubbles. The second investors jump in and bid prices up, you know, it's tough to say what the catalyst would be, but you know, we can see a change anytime.
Yeah, simple price exhaustion. Maybe we'll have that discussion in 2021. John, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
John Pasalis is the president of Realosophy.